there's nothing better than a drink of Channel Islands milk. Except perhaps two drinks. Because of consumer publicity by the Marketing Development Organization of Channel Island milk producers, people are appreciating to an ever-increasing extent the rich cream line and are very willing to pay a premium for this quality food. Channel Islands milk comes only from Guernsey and Jersey cows. They're a favorite attraction at agricultural shows with their Clarabelle contours and attractive coloring. Guernsey lactation is around 760 gallons at a butterfat content of 4.6%. And the Jerseys too are remarkable for the high quality of their milk, with a lactation average of 720 gallons at 5% butterfat. But even today, some farmers still think of these breeds just as show animals, kept by gentlemen landowners to adorn parkland and to win them rosettes. The fact of the matter is that the Guernsey and Jersey are truly commercial breeds, capable of good yields of high-quality milk on a low-cost system. Taking into consideration the extra premium per gallon that this quality milk earns, the efficient commercial farmer obtains a very favorable level of profitability. Let's see how low-cost milk production, based on intensive grassland management, is being obtained in practice. At Tithby in Nottingham, a Guernsey herd is owned by Mr. Peter Baddeley. He farms about 253 acres, and there's nothing elaborate about his farm buildings. Above all, he believes in making the most of the cheapest food, grass. It's midsummer, and the cows are making their way back to the field after milking. Mr. Baddeley has a herd of 80 Guernseys and breeds all his own replacements. On many farms, July can be a difficult time of year for grazing, but on this farm, the herd is finding plenty of good grass on a new lay of Italian ryegrass. This was sown in the spring with 300 weight of ICI new number 1 in the seedbed. When older lays are used, dressing with 300 weight of nitro chalk to the acre in late May enables the grass to recover quickly and gives it resistance against drought. With intensive grassland management, it's vital to control grazing closely, to ration the grass and avoid unnecessary waste. As regards water supply, Mr. Baddeley is fortunate in having a spring-fed earth reservoir. He keeps the edges of this free of weeds with ICI's new herbicide, Gramoxone. As the average rainfall is only 24 inches a year, a certain amount of irrigation can be an advantage, and Mr. Baddeley is able to do this at only moderate cost. When fields have been cut or grazed, they are fertilized, and then in dry weather, recovery can be speeded up by irrigation. Up to an inch a day can be applied to 4 acres. The layout of Holly Tree Farm is by no means ideal, as it is in 2 parts, half a mile distant from each other. But easier working is achieved by grouping all the grass crops around the farm and putting the more distant fields in cereals. Using a 6-course rotation, each year there are about 120 acres in grass and about 130 acres in cereals. Homegrown barley is the main source of the concentrate ration, supplying about 900 weight out of the 1300 weight fed per cow each year. The barley is sown with 300 weight per acre of ICI number 2, and yields on average are about 3600 weight an acre. During the period August to mid-September, nitro chalk is applied to those lays earmarked for late bite. By applying 300 weight per acre in September, grazing can be extended until late November and in some years into December, so making the most of the cheapest source of food and delaying the start of full-time silage feeding. Here on the 8th of December, there's still plenty of grass for the cows. During the summer period, the herd was fed at the rate of half a pound of homegrown cereals per gallon produced. From September onwards, the ration was progressively increased to 2 1/4 pounds per gallon. Usually, the cows are yarded at night in late October and housed completely from early December, which shows that the Channel Island breeds are as hardy as any. At Holly Tree Farm, very good results are being achieved with low capital expenditure on buildings. From their loose housing, the cows have access to the self-feed silage, the bulk of which is made under cover. In the main winter period, supplementary feed is about 3.5 pounds a gallon, of which 2/3 is barley. On this farm, the figure for total solids for milk is around 14%. With intensive grassland systems, minerals are especially important. So ICI minerals and calcined magnesite are included in the concentrate ration. As his silage is of high quality, Mr. Baddeley obtains a considerable saving in concentrates without any loss in milk quality. Originally, a milking bale was used, but recently, with the increase in herd numbers, this herringbone parlour has been installed, so that work that was done by 2 people under the old system can now be done by 1. Over the last 4 years, Mr. Baddeley's herd has averaged 700 gallons of milk at 4.8% butterfat. By January, he is planning the supply of grass for the coming year. In late February, lays which are to provide the first grazings receive about 60 units of nitrogen per acre, either as nitro chalk or nitram. Grazing is chiefly on Italian ryegrass, part autumn and part spring sown. The provision of well-fertilized young lays is particularly important here, as they keep growing despite the low rainfall conditions of the region. Normally, the cows are able to get on to the early bite in late March. Once the herd is on full day and night grazing, concentrate feed is reduced to no more than 2 pounds of barley a day per cow, and this merely as a carrier for calcined magnesite as a precaution against grass staggers. This level of supplementary feeding continues until late August. In order to provide heavy crops of good quality grass for silage, lays receive 130 units of nitrogen per acre in a split dressing of 300 weight of nitro chalk applied in February, followed by 300 weight of ICI number 2 some 4 to 6 weeks later. In this low-cost system of milk production, the emphasis is always on the main stock feed, grass. On the more distant fields, young stock are paddock grazed on 3-year lays which form part of the arable rotation. Again, grass plays an important part in the economic rearing of calves, and all calves over 5 months feed only grass in the summer, and in the second winter only silage. Because of the high stocking rate at Holly Tree Farm, adequate provision for the winter is most important. Silage is the main method of conservation, as much as possible being taken in the first cut when the grass is of the highest quality. This is primarily for the dairy cows. A second cut is always taken, sometimes a third on a small acreage, and this silage is fed mostly to the young stock. Mr. Baddeley reckons to make at least 500 tons in the season. In order to reduce wastage, the walls of his silo are lined, and when filling is complete, the pit will be sealed off with a polythene sheet. It's essential to follow up the high initial spring dressing of fertilizer immediately after each silage cut. Where a field is to be grazed following a silage cut, 300 weight of nitro chalk per acre is applied. On fields where a second cut is to be taken, K-nitro is used. Here, a field cut for silage is now being grazed only 4 weeks afterwards by the dairy herd. So it can be seen that Mr. Baddeley's farming system depends on the intensive use of grass, from which he obtains satisfactory yields the year through from his herd of Guernseys. In this year, he obtained a margin over concentrates of 120 pounds per cow and a gross margin per acre for the dairy cows of 76 pounds. There is no doubt that the Guernsey cow is a profitable animal when managed on this system. Talking of profits, in the past, one of the problems has been the low price received for surplus Channel Island calves. The position has now been altered through the introduction of Charolais bulls. Here we see some Channel Island crosses. These are early weaned, autumn-born calves being summered on intensive grass. They will be sold fat at about 20 months, leaving a gross margin comparable with other crossbreeds. But quite apart from this Charolais cross aspect, pure Jerseys are profitable too. Here at Grindley Farm in Staffordshire, the Jersey breed is proving to be a very sound enterprise for Mr. Keith Duncan. His farm of about 120 acres is 550 feet above sea level, much higher than Holly Tree Farm, and the rainfall is somewhat greater at 28 inches a year. There are about 81 acres in grass, including rough grazing, and 35 to 40 acres of cereals. The breed is different, the situation is different. But again, the aim is high-level, quality milk production at low cost. The last grazing we saw at Holly Tree Farm was of Guernseys on a silage aftermath. Here, Mr. Duncan's herd of 65 Jerseys is doing the same thing, finding plenty to eat on a field which was cut only a month ago and then fertilized. The top yielders of the herd are at present giving 5.5 gallons, of which 4 gallons come from this grass. Autumn calving heifers are run with the dairy herd a month before calving. For a moment, it's worth examining Mr. Duncan's low-cost system of herd replacement. Calves at 3 to 8 weeks old are weaned in this open building. At 12 weeks, they are fed silage, supplemented with up to 2 pounds of a concentrate feed, which is largely cereals. Then they are put out to grass as early as possible on paddocks close to the house. When they get older, they are moved onto meadows bordering the river, which are liable to flood at any time of the year, and so are of little use except for grazing young stock. These meadows are an inconveniently long way from the farmstead, and they cannot support machines because of the wet nature of the ground. But now back to the main issue, that of providing plenty of good grass for the dairy herd. Like Mr. Baddeley, Mr. Duncan extends his grazing season as long as possible, so that the cost of keep is kept to a minimum. On his farm, fertilizer application up to mid-September usually means he can keep his cows out until December. Too often, late bite is undervalued. While it's true to say that it's not of the same quality as spring grass, yet it can make a useful contribution towards reducing the costs of late autumn milk production. In the winter, self-feed silage is available to the cows from an open clamp, carefully filled with high-quality grass cut at the right stage of growth. Because of the suitability of the site, the vacuum silage method has been successfully adopted at Grindley Farm. The top polythene sheet, which is rolled back as the silage is eaten, minimizes top wastage. The silage is very palatable, and as can be seen, there is no waste either at the bottom of the clamp. The analysis of this silage showed a pH of 4.6, a dry matter content of 21.1%, and a crude protein content of 15.3%. This enabled Mr. Duncan to make maximum use of his homegrown barley. The loose housing arrangements have been inexpensively converted from existing buildings, as has also an 8-stall, 4-unit herringbone parlour, which has replaced an old bale-type system. This has meant that the job of milking has been speeded up in spite of an increase in cow numbers, and the herd is milked by only one girl. Over the last 3 years,